It's funny how one small decision can change everything, isn't it? That one moment you ignore your gut, just a little too curious for your own good. I still think about that day sometimes last fall, how I had no idea I'd be walking straight into the most terrifying experience of my life. My name is Chris. I'm 28, work a pretty standard office job in Portland, Oregon, and if you'd asked me before last October, I'd tell you I was a rational person, not prone to flights of fancy or paranoia, but what happened out there? That was real. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't some story I made up to scare myself. I was there. It was a Saturday afternoon, the end of October, when the air's just starting to get that bite to it. Leaves were piling up on the sidewalk, and the streets were scattered with pumpkins. I had been working non-stop for weeks, long hours staring at spreadsheets until my eyes were fried, so I decided to take a hike to clear my head. There's this trail I always go to about a 20-minute drive from my apartment. It's in Forest Park, a huge stretch of woodland on the edge of the city. I left my place around 2:30 p.m., maybe 3 p.m. I know it was a bit late to be heading out, especially since the sun sets earlier in the fall, but I wasn't planning on going far. Just a quick walk, enough to let my mind breathe for a bit. So I grabbed my jacket, threw a bottle of water in my backpack, and set off. The drive was uneventful. Traffic was light and the roads were clear. The forest was quiet too, almost too quiet now that I think about it. I parked in the lot near the main trailhead. You know how it is in the fall. Everything smells of damp leaves and cold earth. I'd hiked this trail dozens of times, knew it like the back of my hand. But for some reason, that day, I felt this strange pull to explore something different. I spotted this narrow path off to the side, one that I don't remember seeing before. It was almost hidden by the overgrown bushes, and the rational part of me said, but like an idiot, I didn't listen. I pushed through the branches and started walking. At first it seemed fine, just another part of the woods. But the further I went, the more things started to feel off. The trees were denser here, their trunks twisted in strange shapes, the ground softer, almost spongy under my feet. It felt like the woods were watching me. About 20 minutes in, I saw it, an old wooden sign, half buried in the ground. The paint was faded, but I could just make out the word Holloway. I paused, staring at it for a moment. Holloway? It didn't ring any bells. I took a quick picture of the sign with my phone, planning to look it up later, and kept going, thinking maybe this was some old, forgotten trail. That's when I noticed the cabin. I swear it just appeared out of nowhere, like I had walked right into a different world. The thing was barely standing. Its roof sagged, windows shattered, and the wood was blackened as if it had once caught fire. My first thought was that it was some old hunting lodge, maybe abandoned decades ago. But something about it didn't sit right with me. I stood there frozen, staring at it, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind was racing, but I felt this strange compulsion to go inside. It was like my body was moving on its own, ignoring every instinct screaming at me to leave. The door was hanging on its hinges, creaking softly in the wind. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with the smell of rot and decay. Dust clung to every surface, and the floor was covered in debris, broken furniture, shattered glass, and something else I couldn't quite place. My flashlight flickered as I moved deeper into the cabin, illuminating the far wall. That's when I saw it. A map. A massive hand-drawn map pinned to the wall with rusty nails. The paper was yellowed with age, and the lines were shaky, like they'd been drawn in a hurry. But the name Holloway was right there, in the center, circled over and over. I felt this chill run down my spine. This wasn't just some old map, it was a warning, and I'd walked straight into it. I backed away, my hands shaking, and that's when I heard it, a whisper. So soft I thought I imagined it at first. Chris. I spun around, shining my flashlight in every direction, but there was no one there. Just empty, dark corners. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, and all I wanted to do was get out. I turned to leave, but something caught my eye. A mirror tucked into the corner of the room. It was an old, ornate mirror, its glass cracked and dirty, but I could still make out my reflection. Or, at least I thought it was my reflection. because standing right behind me was a figure, a woman, her face pale, eyes wide, mouth twisted in a silent scream. I whipped around, but there was no one there, just shadows. I didn't wait to find out what was going on. I bolted out of the cabin, sprinting down the path, branches whipping at my face. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed to get away. But the forest, it wasn't the same. The trees looked different, and the path I had taken was gone, swallowed up by the woods. I was lost, completely, utterly lost. My heart was racing, and I could barely think straight. I tried to call for help, but my phone had no signal. The sun was setting, and the woods were growing darker by the second. Panic set in, and I started running again, not knowing where I was going, just desperate to find my way out. Then, I saw it. The sign. Holloway. I had somehow circled back to where I started. I collapsed on the ground, tears stinging my eyes. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. But then, I heard it again. The whisper. Louder this time. "Chris, come back." My blood ran cold. I stumbled to my feet, refusing to look back. I forced myself to walk, even though every muscle in my body was screaming at me to run. I don't know how long I wandered, but eventually I found the main trail again. I don't even remember getting back to my car. I just remember the overwhelming sense of relief when I finally saw the familiar path leading back to the parking lot. When I got home, I pulled out my phone to look at the picture I'd taken of the sign, but it wasn't there. The picture was gone. No sign, no cabin. Nothing to prove what I'd seen. I don't know what Holloway is or what I stumbled into that day, but I haven't been back to that part of the woods since. And I don't plan to. Not ever. But every now and then, when I'm alone in my apartment, I swear. I can still hear her whispering my name.